Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. Hi, this is Craig. Just want to let you know you can now advertise here on Everyone Loves Guitar podcast. For more information, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber, and welcome to another episode of Everyone Loves Guitar. Man, I'm so excited, man, and I'm going to rock your world because I'm going to introduce you to a great guitar player and a great artist that I'm willing to bet 95% or more of everyone listening to this has never heard before. And I'm going to bet once you start listening to his music, some of you are going to cry, some of you are going to stop and do some reflecting about your own life, and some of you are going to try to figure out how the hell he's doing what he's doing and then immediately start playing his riffs. But I will tell you that everybody's going to love what he has to say musically and with his guitar and personally as well. And the reason why I'm going to blow your mind today is because my guest today is Warren Mendonsa, who runs the band BlackstratBlues. And he's not from Texas, he's not from California, and he's not from the Delta. He's from like a little town called Mumbai that's got like 1.4 million people in it, in a little country called India that's got almost 2 billion people in it. And I don't know about you, but until I heard Warren, I didn't even know there was a big blues scene or blues, psychedelic music, whatever, over in India, because we just don't get exposed to a lot of Indian music here, at least never on commercial radio, maybe on terrestrial radio, but you really got to search for it, I think. And I got to tell you, I have not been moved by music like this since I first heard David Gilmour. He's incredibly soulful, and incredibly deep, and man, he's just a cool cat. I'm really glad he's on the show. On top of that, he's super modest, but he's like kind of like Bon Jovi over in India, and he's super busy. He's a real family guy, so I am very grateful he's taking the time to come speak with us today. And I also want you to know that I'm going to read his bio, but with like one exception. I left out the names of the artists and producers Warren's worked with because most of the people here don't know them, but suffice it to say there's some big names. So that being said, let me tell you a little bit about Warren and then we'll dig into this. He's a guitarist who plays blues and psychedelic rock. He got his formal start in music in '98, forming the band Zero with his childhood friends. Over the years, Zero grew to enjoy nationwide popularity in India, winning national contests. Again, remember, nationwide popularity in a country with 2 billion people is like nothing that anybody here has ever experienced. They released 2 albums and an EP. Besides his work in Zero, he recorded and released a number of instrumentals which enjoyed fame on online music forums like GigPad and Harmony Central. During this period of time, he became a highly sought-after recording engineer and session player, and he worked on various film soundtracks, ad jingles, and other studio records. In late 2004, he moved to Auckland, New Zealand, and he began working on a solo instrumental material. This resulted in his debut solo album, which was called Nights in Shining Karma, which is like, he's got the coolest titles of his records. We'll talk about those today too. And that was released in 2007. That album garnered significant appreciation and fame online. From 2005 to 2010, he worked still doing studio sessions as a producer and a recording engineer, still in Auckland, New Zealand, with many artists. He also produced an album that won a dual national awards, for Best Country Song and Best Country Album of the Year. So this guy's pretty deep. Country, blues, psychedelic rock, he does it all. And his wife said he cooks a mean omelet. Since 2010, Warren's been based largely in India, and he's worked as a guitarist, producer with various artists, including Oscar-winning movie producer AR Rahman, Oscar-winning soundtrack writer AR Rahman, most well known as the artist behind the soundtrack to the awesome movie Slumdog Millionaire. Warren's currently a session player with Rahman and other well-known Indian artists. All 4 of Warren's solo albums have been released under the blackstratblues group name. His last album, 2017's The Last Analog Generation, went straight to number ones on iTunes in India cross genre charts on the day it was released. Dude, thank you so much for your time, man.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. How did you, first of all, does Fender at least sponsor you?
I have an informal arrangement with their local dealer. So, I mean, he's always like happy to help and stuff like that. But the thing is, I'm a bit picky, and let's just say that he doesn't really have access to all the models that they have, because he has to keep in mind that, you know, kids in India, these are the budgets that they would be spending. So if I want, like, say, a custom shop guitar or something like that, then I would have to order it through him, for which I would get a discount. But I mean, it hasn't come to that point yet, because I like shopping for used guitars. That's like my thing. And then modding the hell out of them. So I don't really, you know, I think I got a couple of him, which again got modded and stuff like that. So, but he's always been helpful.
Well, dude,
he's called on stage.
That guy sounds great, but let me see if we could fix this now. If anybody in Fender is listening, you've got to hook Warren up with a freaking custom guitar to his specifications. I mean, this is ridiculous. Not only do you only play, it's not like you're playing Gibsons and everything. You're like only playing Strats 90% of the time, I think, right?
Yeah, most of the time. Like I've got a Dan Electro 12 string and the 335 for like the odd session, but the Strat is what's home for me.
Not only that, but the name of your band, blackstratblues, is the name of the guitar. I mean, like, you're a walking billboard for Fender. If anybody from Fender is listening, man, put the wheels in motion to make this happen. Get this man a custom guitar. Get him a signature guitar, man, and release it in India. There's got to be enough guys in India that are willing to spend the big bucks to get a Warren Mendonsa signature model. Anyway, that's that. I just wanted to take care of that, because I was thinking that yesterday. I was driving home. I was listening to the new album. Warren's got his third record, I think, was called The New Album, right? The second one. And I was listening to it, and I'm thinking, man, I bet this guy doesn't even have a deal with Fender, these cheap asses. So let's fix this. Anyway, I feel like I like contributing to just causes. Man, how did you first get into doing soundtracks?
I think at the time I grew up, my dad's brother, he's a pretty popular musician. He started off doing, like, you know, TV and like, you know, that end of the scale in terms of soundtracks. His name is Loy, and he's always been like really a big influence and always helpful. Like, in fact, he's the guy that showed me how to play, like, you know, that sort of thing. So he was a musician that worked in the studio, and so I kind of had some kind of an idea that, you know, that's what you could do as well, apart from just playing in bands and stuff like that. And I went to engineering college because my scores in maths and science were pretty good. So my parents thought, okay, we'll pack you off to engineering college and see where that leads to. And in the middle, I think, of my second or third year, there was a vacancy at my uncle's friend's studio. And he said, you want to just come by and check it out and see if it's something you enjoy doing? So I did. And I think, like, in a week, I was like, man, this is amazing. The studio is like, you know, it's like a laboratory and an amusement park all rolled into. So, yeah, I took to that, and slowly, just by meeting people and stuff. And then they realized, oh, not only is this guy an engineer, he also plays guitar. So that led to, you know, opening up things for me. Wow.
Did you drop out of school at that point?
Yeah, I kind of called my parents and told them I'm going to do both, you know, the studio and continue my studies. But I quickly realized, okay, that's not going to happen. So I kind of sheepishly tell them, like, oh, I don't think the study thing's going to happen. But then I started making some money in the studio. And they were like, okay, if that's what you want to do, then, you know, go ahead. The good thing is I do come from a musical family on both sides, and they do love music. So that always, you know, worked in my favor.
That's great. So they were supportive of your decision.
Absolutely.
Great, man. That's really nice to hear. It's interesting. People often ask you, what are the characteristics of successful guitar players? That is number one. almost all of them had real supportive parents toward their career. Yeah.
My mom bought me my first Strats, which I'll always be, indebted to her for. I'd like kind of almost they were like, please, 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 and then on my 19th birthday, that's when I kind of got it.
That's awesome, man. So how old were you when you started playing guitar? You were 19? No,
I was technically I picked up a guitar when I was 5 because they noticed like my dad had an acoustic, and I would go and pick the strings of the guitar that were in tune with the song that was playing. So they said, okay, maybe he's got a bit of a ear. And they bought me a little baby guitar, like a 3/4 half-size guitar thing. And I learned my, first 5 chords and stuff like that, but it wasn't exactly something I took to right away. And till I was 15, like, my parents would have parties, and every party would turn into a sing-song, and the guitars were pulled out and stuff. And I would sit there with my little guitar and jiggle. And then slowly I started learning. I think by the time I was 8 or 9, I got heavily into the Beatles. And that was like, boom, like it's like that Wizard of Oz moment where everything turns into Technicolor. And the Beatles introduced me to like pretty much everything I listen to. If you look at it, blues, jazz, old show tunes, rock and roll, even a bit of heavy metal, definitely psychedelic music. It's like, and then listening to the people that they influenced as well, that kind of opened up many doors to me.
It's funny, when you listen through your catalog, you definitely hear the progression of your maturity as a songwriter and as a guy who's sculpting melodies. Not that, let me clarify, not that the first record wasn't great, but you can just hear the maturity of you as an artist, when throughout, and the depth of the melodies, the layers, everything gets much richer as you go along.
I obviously love playing guitar, but for me, it's just a vehicle to make music.
It's funny.
I'll not get trapped into, just playing guitar for guitar's sake, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. And you certainly don't. So like on your first record, it was funny. I heard Joe Satriani influences on there a little bit. Did you ever, was he you were like shredding heavily kind of.
I did have a couple of his albums. I had that G3 album he did the live one with Steve Vai and Eric Johnson. I think every guitar player here bought a copy when it came out. He was definitely a great melodic guitar player to listen to. And some of the simpler stuff he did, I could, say, okay, maybe I can play a bit of that. But just when he went into his superhuman mode, I was like, okay, I'm just going to let him do it.
No, I hear you, man. So I don't know how it works. Or do you play on the soundtracks, and do you also do some writing on them, or are you only playing, or?
By default, I'm called in to play on them, and sometimes you end up contributing towards the writing of it. But it's not an official thing, Like if you write like a melodic section in a song, for example, it's not considered writing the song, is it? So in that sense, no. But I'm always open to like chipping in my bit and say maybe you could try this or that if asked. And sometimes they're very cool. They just keep it open and they say, man, what changes do you want over this section and stuff like that. Or sometimes I would come in and they already have like a reference guitar that's played on, like a programmed thing. And then I just have to copy it note for note. And I give them exactly what they had in mind. And then they say, okay, would you want to try something else? And then, that comes along. And some of the stuff you do ends up being kept, and sometimes you like come up with something that you think is cool, which may not necessarily fit into their vision of the song, which is absolutely fair enough, because at the end of the day, it's not my name on it,
Sure.
So I just show up to serve their vision of the song the best I can.
So you're functioning as a session player on those for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha. In 2004, you moved from India to New Zealand. What prompted you to do that? That's a pretty big move.
My mom. So she was, she kind of was always looking at, the option of getting out of India at the time. And She said to me if I can. She's a primary school teacher, and she just so happened to come across this ad for New Zealand immigration, and they said that there's a shortage of primary school teachers there. And then I think she had to apply for an exam which she aced pretty much, and so she got her visa, and so did my parents and my other two younger brothers through her. And she asked me if I wanted to come along to New Zealand. And at the time, I was pretty well settled with the zero thing, and we were quite popular and stuff. I mean, when you mention nationwide popularity, you have to just reiterate it's a country of like 2 whatever billion people. So we're popular among a certain a small little section of pie chart. But like it was mainly colleges and the younger kids that were into English music and rock music that knew us. And anyway, so I told them, like, why don't you guys go ahead? And so they went ahead in 2003. And they settled really well and stuff like that. So they said, maybe you just want to come over for a holiday and, see how things go. So I said, okay, cool. And I landed there. And at the time, like a year later, it's kind of like I'd ridden that zero curve to a point where it's like, okay, I need a little bit of a change of pace. So that's kind of what prompted the move there. And then once I did, it was like a totally different world, as you can imagine. And also, there were no expectations of who I was as a guitar player or a musician. So it was like completely new blank canvas, which I found really exciting. And that's kind of what resulted in that first album, which we kind of made in 2005.
Are your parents is your family still over there, or are they back in India?
No. They live there. They're coming back. They're really happy there. And hopefully at some point down the line, my wife and daughter will join them there.
That's cool, man.
So just going to ride, like right now things are going well in India. So we'll see, but at any given point, considering I've got my passport there. So I'm a New Zealand citizen officially. So I guess in a few years.
Good for you, man. How far is that, like time-wise in a flight?
It's around 5.5 to Singapore, and then there's no direct flight. And then around 10 hours to Auckland.
Holy shit. So it's like on the other side of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, from India, I think the States is a bit longer.
Well, yeah, but it's still far away. Yeah.
It is. And it's kind of isolated there, geographically. I mean, you just go to Australia, that's close by.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great, man. So when you first got to New Zealand, like I could see the allure of that, like having not a fresh start, because it's not like you needed a fresh start, but having a clear slate, as you said, or a clear palette. How did you go about getting work? What did you do? And I know you recorded the first album there, and you can maybe segue into that.
Yeah. The funny thing is, when I imagined moving there, I thought I was going to play a lot of rock and roll, and the whole country was just caught in this huge dub wave. So everything was like chang, chang. This is different from what I expected. It took me a while to meet people there, and it took me almost like a couple of years actually before I met people that I related to really well musically. I'll come to that because the second album is all about how that happened. But I had taken over some recording gear with me, and my brother also had a bit, so we pooled our resources together, and we had a little recording studio in the garage at our parents' house. And I had all these melodies in various stages of completion. So I was like, okay, cool. I mean, we've got this set up here, and all I need actually is a drummer. And he's like, okay, I can program drums. I've got like a really good drum programming software, and he's really good at it, because sometimes you can't really tell that, someone else, it's not an actual drummer. But
you're right. It doesn't sound like that at all, because I would have, it wasn't overt, because I'm pretty good at picking that up. It wasn't overt. If I had listened for that, I might have heard it, but you're right. It was not. It was really good.
Funnily enough, there was one song called Blues for Gary, which was like a straight up blues shuffle, and he refused to do it. He's like, I don't know how this works. Why don't you just do it yourself? You're better off at this than me. So that's and just boof, boof, baff. That's pretty much the drums and the whole song. So when you play it live now, it actually takes on a different life.
Oh my God, I've seen you play it live on YouTube. That is one of my favorite songs of yours. It's such a great song. We'll talk about that later, actually.
Yeah. So anyway, so he did all the drum programming, and once that was done, it was like boom, everything just fell into place. And I think we recorded really quickly. It took maybe like 2 or 3 weeks at the most. But then once things were recorded, I just sat on it and I didn't want to listen to it for a while, because then you become too close for it and you need a bit of time to get some perspective when you sit down to mix it. So that's why it took till 2007 to release.
Oh, I totally get that, especially you doing everything yourself. It was pretty smart.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just a vehicle to get those ideas across. And I mean, some of those songs still stick around. People still want us to play it at gigs and stuff, so which I'm always grateful for. And my brother Zoran is his name. He's the youngest brother, and he wrote most of the last song of the album, which is called Bombay Rain.
That's a great song, man.
Yeah. In fact, he wrote it, and I was like, man, are you going to do anything with this song? He's like, I don't know. And I said, do you want me to include it on the album? I can put some guitar in it and stuff. He said, okay, cool, go ahead. So for the longest time, once the album was released, I refused to play it live unless he was there. If he'd come down to India, that's the only time we played. And then finally, like after 3 or 4 years, he's like, you can just play it without me, right? It's like, okay, cool, fine.
So you're like giving him a tribute to your brother.
Yeah, man, it's pretty much his song. I still look at it that way. And I obviously miss him because we don't get to hang out every day and stuff like we used to. But yeah, it's a great song.
That's got to be tough for you, because I know, I grew up in New York City. Obviously, there's loads of big Indian population, and it must be tough for you because I know how close Indian families are. So I give you credit for sort of being the black sheep, or not, what I'm saying, not the black sheep, but, doing your own thing and, being okay with it. That's like really cool.
I mean, I try, and especially now that I've got my daughter, I realize the importance of, keeping in touch with your parents. So I FaceTime them a couple of times a week, just so they can see her as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
We go there like for a month every year.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's a good time to catch up with them, especially in June. It gets a little bit. The work tends to not as busy as the rest of the year. So unfortunately, that's winter in New Zealand. The middle of.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Mom keeps trying to, why don't you just come in summer? It's like, Mom, that's like when I'm the busiest over here.
Yeah. Well, hey, a month is a lot of time. That's really cool, man. Hey, I want to ask you a few questions about some of your work. I can literally spend an hour about talking on each of your records, but I'm going to ask you just a few questions. Like I said, next time you drop something, man, if you come back on the show, and we'll promote it and to an audience here in America, and hopefully we can launch it there. But I want to tell people that, first of all, Warren's work, again, it's under Black Strat Blues. It's really good, man. If you like 6, 7, 8, even 10 and 11 minute songs that are really well thought out. And I've mentioned David Gilmour once, and I don't want to imply Warren sounds like Gilmour. He doesn't, but you're very economical as a player, and that's like Gilmour.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a huge influence, though I didn't really get into him right at the start. I mean, I had the Pulse album that came out when I was in college, and I had listened to all the big Pink Floyd songs. It was much later, I think, just before, in fact, I moved to New Zealand. That's when I got into them. And once I moved to New Zealand, the whole, everything being really quiet and peaceful and everything, it allowed me to actually delve into those records. Because I just had a pair of speakers as well in the garage that I would able to turn it up really loud and listen without bugging anyone else. And that's kind of, once you start soaking into those albums, it takes you on a journey and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I love the most about his playing, especially on Wish You Were Here, that whole album, and say on Animals.
Yeah.
And And then later on, obviously, the Division Bell came kind of, I mean, though you don't have Roger Waters on that, but it still was a great album to listen to, just musically.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I'm like a huge Gilmour fan. In fact, like earlier in this year, I went with another friend who's a huge Pink Floyd fan, and we saw the Live at Pompeii thing on a cinema screen.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like the closest I've got to seeing him live.
I'm with you. I'm the same way. I went and saw it with my wife. It was like about 6 months ago here, about 5-6 months ago, something like August, September, or something like that. Or July, I don't know when it came out there. But it was a great movie. Great movie.
Totally. But also, I mean, if you look at Pink Floyd, like I think Rick writes the secret weapon, pretty much like John Jones was with Zeppelin, and it's like all those chord changes and everything where what's that? Remember you were young. That's the first time I heard that, man. From there, going to and if you look at it, it's pretty much a blues song with some really cool changes.
Very much. Which is how I look at your music, man, because, you're a blues guy, but you're really more of like you play blues changes. You're not like, Howlin' Wolf or Stevie Ray Vaughan or anything like that, And again, I'm not trying to, you're very individual. I'm not trying to imply that like you're like Pink Floyd at all, but they mean a lot to me, and like your music, I feel the same way about it. It's really takes me on a journey, man.
Even Stevie Ray was like a big influence. Stevie Ray and I think Gary Moore, because like, I saw Stevie Ray as like the pinnacle of like the American blues thing, and Gary was the British guy. And thankfully through them, I was able to go further back into what they were listening to, and get into Albert King and keep going further back and back. And Howlin' Wolf on all the Zeppelin stuff, they owe him a fair bit of gratitude. And the same with Gary, going back to like, and actually before Gary, I got into the what's that? The John Mayer and the Blues Breakers album, the one with Captain on it, because
Beano.
Beano and the first Cream record. That's 2 cassettes my dad gave me. So he was like, "Okay, you want to get into blues? Maybe just check this out as well." It's not exactly blues, but it's cool.
Oh, it's very cool.
Yeah.
So, 2007, first record, Nights in Shining Karma. I never asked this, but that is such a cool name. Like, was that like an Indian version of Nights in White Satin, or because it's not even Nights K-N-I, it's Nights in Shining Karma, N-I-G.
It's a dad.
It's a dad joke.
It's basically a pun on Knights in Shining Armor, and I just like thought it'd be cool to have the word karma, and then my mind's always like. Working on puns, like even at the back when I'm thinking about something else, like it drives people around me mad sometimes.
No, I like that. That's good. I like clever humor like that, man.
Yeah. Then, in fact, what's the band? XTC. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they have an album called KNIG. It's Nights in, not an album. They had a song called Nights in Shining Karma, and I found that out later after I released the album. I was like, oh shit, I should have.
I didn't know. I never heard that. I know XTC. I never heard that song.
Great band though, yeah.
That cover, it's like an adorable, like sort of black and white photo. Is that like your mom holding you?
Yeah.
It is. It's so funny, man.
I think it was 1980. I was born in 79, the fag end of the 70s. So that would have been early 80s.
That's such a funny thing, man. So we talked about Gary Moore being an influence on you. Blues for Gary. What a great song, man. What a great song. I've seen you do that live. It's just like epic.
Yeah, it's always a good one to stretch out in the verses, and then you just have to bang that, what I would call the chorus, the memorable melody part of the song. And I don't know if you ever heard a song he did called Blues for Narada. It's on a compilation album that wasn't really one of his, on his main albums. But that's something you got to check out, because that guitar sound is like pretty much one of my tonal benchmarks, and his playing on that, it's like a really kind of like doing this. So that shuffle thing is something I really loved, and kind of what I based Blues for Gary on. So that's pretty much like a straight, doff of the hat to him, because he was huge. And that's like one of the lessons I learned early, because I used to really chase his tone and stuff like that. And the harder I chased it, the more I ended up sounding like me. so
this is great. So it's a good journey.
Yeah, pretty much. And I still love his playing. It can get a bit, aggressive at times, and not exactly subtle. But then if you just want to ask it, he's one of the best guys to listen to.
I agree with you. One of my favorite guitar players. When I love his blues stuff more than his like metal period.
Though I love what he did with Carlisi, and he had a couple of early albums, I think Corridors of Power and Victims of the Future.
Yeah.
Those were great, man. I love his, like, he used to play a Strat to like a Boss DS1 into a Marshall.
Mm.
It's like almost like it's biting you in the face.
Yeah.
But it's so cool.
No, he was a very aggressive player, man.
Yeah, and then later on, when he got into the blues, obviously he became a Les Paul player and stuff like that, which I love that period as well. Though I know it's pretty much 50-50 for me. I love both periods.
Did I don't know if you know this. I think Jeff Beck did that song also, Blues for Narada.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
because Narada was his drummer.
Correct, Narada Michael Walden.
Yeah, on the Wired album, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
It was either Wired or Blow by Blow, one of those two.
Yeah. So I think Blues for Narada was written for Narada Michael Walden. I always thought I'm going to track down the Jeff Beck thing, because it'd be really cool because Gary was a huge fan, a Jeff Beck fan.
Yeah.
You can hear it in his playing at times when he's using the whammy bar and stuff like that.
Same album, Nights in Shining Karma, Bombay Rain. You mentioned that was your brother's song. There's some really pretty acoustic in there.
That's all him.
Oh, really?
That's all him. The things I did on that song were the main melody guitars, and there's a little fretless bass part that I programmed. That was it.
Wow.
The rest is all.
Great track, man.
Yeah.
2009, the name of the record was The New Album, which is probably really smart when it was the new album, but now to always go back and say, oh, it's on the new album, it probably messes people up, right?
Yeah, I know. I kind of saw that coming, but but at the time it was really different from the first one. So
yeah,
it was like taking a fork in the road and going somewhere else.
Great album.
I don't know if you want to know how that album came about.
Yeah, man.
So a few months before that, I was working on an album with another friend called Emma, who also sang on Older, Wise and Grey from the new album. She needed a drummer for one of her songs, and she was kind of holding out till she found just the right guy for the job. And we happened to come across a gig where we came across this guy. He said, man, this guy's going to be perfect for the song. Let's just ask him if he'll come and play. And at the time, I was fortunate to be working at a really good studio called Hill Street Studios. And so I said, man, will you think about getting your kit over and tracking on a song? We don't really have a budget and stuff. He said, I'll see you on so-and-so date. And he came, and I remember we set up the mics and we played him the song, and he nailed it pretty much instantly. And so we had all this time left over. And I think Emma ended up leaving the studio. But the two of us were stuck there, and Cole started playing some Zeppelin stuff. And I think he got into Achilles' Last Stand, which is like one of my favorite Zeppelin songs. I was like, hang on, man. Just brought the Les Paul out, plugged it in, and, I don't think we stopped playing for 3 or 4 hours, and the time just flew by. So I knew I found like someone who, I could vibe off really easily. And he's like, man, you should meet these other guys I'm playing with as well. And they had a cover band that they would play every Friday night. And they were called the Silhouettes, if I remember correctly. And there was Johnny Barker on vocals and guitar, and Jared on bass, and Cole on drums. And these guys were like some of the sickest guys I've seen, because they could all play drums, bass, guitars, and keyboards pretty much,
Like all of them. Could play interchangeable instruments. Holy shit.
Yeah, I was like the dumb guy, could just play guitar and a little bit of bass. So that was like a really good learning experience also, because they introduced me to a lot of music and, stuff that I wouldn't normally have got into myself. Like I mentioned, Domian, a band from Sweden, who I love. So,
now, is this in India or is this in New Zealand?
No, this was New Zealand. I'd already moved there. So the first album came out just after I moved. Or it was recorded just after I moved, rather. So I moved there in 2005 for good. So, so these were like the first guys I could met and say, okay, cool. I really enjoy playing with them, and they like all the same kind of music that I listen to as well. So that kind of brought things going. And I was like, ooh, and suddenly like I had a whole bunch of these ideas, even like sitting at home and playing guitar and stuff. And I started filing them away. And finally one day, I think the guy who owned the studio, he said, man, if you ever need to use the studio during downtime, go ahead, which was very generous of him. So I called Cole and I said, man, I've got like some songs, you want to come and record them? So I had put down, I think 3 or 4 of them, I had just put them down to a click track. And then he just came in with his drum set and he banged out 5 songs in a day.
Is this your current drummer?
No, Cole is still in New Zealand. So my current drummer is Jairo Kavi, who's in India. We'll come to him later because he's another character. But,
dude, that guy, just to interrupt for 1 second.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no words. That guy is a monster. I mean, he's noticeably, adds a lot besides keeping the bottom going. I mean, like a Swiss watch. He's really a badass, man.
He's in the States right now. He's touring with another Bollywood artist. So he's just sent us a message from Atlanta saying hi. Anyway, so...
Well, dude, that means you got to get over here. Another guy's blazing a trail, man. I want to have a slew of Indian rock stars coming over here, man.
We'd love to, man. Just a matter of making it happen. So, yeah, hopefully soon. Anyway, so coming back to the second album. So anyways, once Cole put down his drum parts, it was like, boom, doors are open wide, and I just had all the studio time. And it was like a really, fertile, creative period. And so that took another couple of months, and that was done. So I don't know if you want to talk about any of the songs on the album and stuff like that. So
I do. I want to talk about 2 songs, and you mentioned they're sandwiched, I think, around that the gray, the one you mentioned that woman had sang. But you have a song called Ode to a Rainy Day, which is 8 minutes long, and Ode to a Sunny Day, which is like 11 minutes long. And man, I'll tell you what, it was funny because my wife she's from England and she was in the UK. She just came home yesterday. She's visiting her mom, and I picked her up, and man, we've been together 26 years, but musically, oddly enough, as much as music means to me, we're not really compatible. So I had the new album playing, and I said, shit, let me see how long I can get away with this. And in the car, and she's talking, and she goes, what's this music? I said, it's a guy named Ronnie Van Zant. He's actually coming on the show tomorrow. He's from India. And, I think that's so cool because I've never had anybody from India on here. You're like a unicorn, man. I mean, I didn't know you existed, And I said, I love his music. I said, I haven't stopped listening to it since I got turned on to him, and she says, yeah, I really like this. It's like taking you on a journey. And I'm like, holy shit, you could sell anything to anybody. I think that's the first time in 26 years I really like it. Those 4 words came out of her mouth and something I was playing. So for whatever that's worth, it's a good story. But yeah, but that's what was playing, Ode to a Rainy Day and then Ode to a Sunny Day, which really is a great trip, man. It's a great stretch out. So how did those come about? Talk about the backstory for those.
So the backstory starts like I got a looper, right? So start, putting down a few chords and then, just put on some delays and, have a little bit of fun on top of that. And during one of those looper sessions, I think I came up with like, the main riff of Ode to a Rainy Day. And then you kind of file it away and then you come back to it another day. And then you've got the next section that, you wonder, will it fit or not and stuff like that. And luckily I was able to like put these ideas down, in a recording software and then just probably edit them together and see if they worked. And it's basically you're building two different moods, right? So rainy day is pretty much like, a rainy day in which in the case, the funny thing is a little bit of an explanation is required, because in India, the rains are a relief from the summer heat.
Okay.
So everyone looks forward to the rain when it comes. It's like, especially in Mumbai, because like you're dying and then the rain's coming and it just washes everything, and it keeps the temperatures under control. Whereas in Auckland, cold rain is not pleasant. So, and the sky is overcast for like weeks at a time, and you don't see the sun, it can get a bit bleak, especially your mood start dropping and stuff like that. So that was something new to me. I had never experienced that before, because I'm always been a little bit of a upbeat guy.
Yeah.
So, having that, like, your mood sinking low and stuff like that, I guess that just came out in the music as well. And so we had probably like 3 weeks of no sun, and one day the sun just popped out, and I was sitting with an acoustic guitar, and that just, that thing just came out.
That's so beautiful, man. No, seriously, just hearing you play it, I got like goosebumps, man. It's really
the funny
good.
thing is when I played it, it pretty much moved me, So I felt, oh shit, if it moves me, then maybe it's got a chance of moving other people as well.
Oh yeah.
And till now, I don't think we've really done too many gigs without playing that song.
That's beautiful, man.
And it's kind of like, you work on it, and when it's done, you listen to it like, holy shit, did I do that? It's almost you were just like an antenna, and you just caught radio reception from somewhere else.
Yeah, the universe put it through you, man. It's beautiful. That's that whole album from like the I don't know, the third or fourth song. It's just like, and that it puts me in the same state of mind that I was like when I'd listen to it. We Wish You Were Here, you talked about, or Animals. It's like there's a certain point you just surrender to the music, man, and that's all that's important to you. It was really great.
Because I think at that point as well, I had kind of gotten over about trying to prove myself as a guitar player in a technical sense. And I was really listening to a lot more soundscapey music and stuff like cinematic orchestra and, just not really guitar-centric music.
Yeah.
With the guitar. So I was really happy for the guitar to take a backseat when it's needed and just let melody or even like the piano or to a sunny day take over and just create a mood. And then when the guitar comes in, it has like twice the impact, because then it's like, the stage is already set for the lead character to appear. And then when he comes, he doesn't really have to do that much. He just shows up. That kind of thing.
That's good. I give you credit because you got that out of your system early. Like you got comfortable with your playing, that you didn't have to prove yourself. I think that's pretty huge, because a lot of people don't get that out of their system for a while, and sometimes they don't get out of the system forever.
Yeah, I mean, it goes in cycles. I can listen to like Eric Johnson play Cliffs of Dover and say, man, I wish I could do that.
Sure.
I said I'll try and do it slowly, and I can do it slowly, but the moment you get it up to speed, it just falls apart. So I was like, maybe I should just leave that to the people who can do it well. And I think some people have more of an aptitude for playing fast. And for me, the more important thing is, like, even if you're playing fast, you need to groove,
Yeah.
Like you need to have rhythm when you're playing. You need to have tone, you need to have your vibrato and everything all together. And I definitely enjoy listening to that kind of thing. It's just when I try to do it myself, I realize that I should leave it to the profession.
Yeah, but that's, but I don't think as an outsider, right, comparing yourself to Eric Johnson, it's like I had a guy named Randy Jackson on the show, and I listened to him when I was growing up. He had a band called Zebra. They're really big in the New York City, the tri-state area. And he said, man, I look at John Lennon and Paul McCartney, and for me to have put out that much good work, my life isn't long enough to write the number of songs I'd write to have them acceptable. And I said, dude, you're comparing yourself to probably literally the two most successful songwriters in the history of music, and that's similar to you're comparing yourself to Eric Johnson, Satriani. That's like not a reasonable basis of comparison to validate, if you're if your guitar playing is worthy or not, sort of, and it's good that you came to that conclusion.
Yeah. I mean, as a guitar player, you definitely want to be able to play the stuff that you enjoy listening to as well. I mean, it's just, kind of natural to feel that way. But I think the sooner you realize that the time that you spend, once you reach a certain level of proficiency, the more time you're trying to spend to like ape other people's stuff, that's time you take away from honing your own craft. So you need to kind of figure out like what you do well, because there's not another me, right? I'm the only me.
Yeah.
So might as well be the best me. That's a very simple way of putting it. But
yeah. It's tough enough to be yourself, man. There's no way. Like for me, it takes everything to be me. I couldn't even imagine trying to be somebody else. I barely do me. That's all I do.
And it's getting comfortable with failing.
Yeah.
With not being able to come up to like the ideal you have in your head. Obviously, now to attain that, you're going to have to fail a few times to get. And every once in a while, the universe aligns and you come up with something that you yourself are happy with, and you can bear to listen to again and again. And when that happens, man, it's like the best thing in the world.
Well, that happened on the new album, man. So, thank you for making it. It's great. I would, if you're going to listen to Blackstrat Blues, start with anything you want, but the new album is great. And again, it's called the new album. It's not the new album, which is not called anyway. So you just messed with everybody's head by doing that, which is great. 2015, you had another great album title, The Universe. This is like one of my favorite album titles ever. The Universe Has a Strange Sense of Humor. What was going on that, possessed you to come up with that one?
That was me noticing a lot of, coincidences in my life, which, I came across this really good Joe Walsh interview. And I think he said something like, at the time that these events occur, it'll just seem like absolute chaos. But then you have the perspective of time, and then you look back at everything, it looks like a finely written novel, which, that's something that really stuck with me. And at the time I was writing that album, I had met, the woman that I would eventually marry. And it's like a lot of things aligned at that particular time after like a period of what I thought was chaos. Why is this happening? Why aren't things going the way I want them to be and stuff like that? And the moment they fall into place, you're like, oh, I guess that's why I had to go through all that to get to this point. So yeah, that's kind of what inspired the album title. It's
funny you said that. Yeah, I have this saying that kind of, you can't connect the dots moving forward.
Yeah.
But it's funny you mentioned Joe Walsh. I have this little quote, and I always rewrite it every time I pull up a new notebook. And he said, when he was talking about forming the Eagles, he said, we didn't know what we were doing. We just knew it was going to work. And I always keep that because I like that, because in my younger years, I used to be very methodical and planned. And then as I got older, I went more with my gut, and I like that feeling better. And I reference that a lot,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the first album, it's pretty much like thought out and, let's dot the I's and cross the T's. And as things progress, it just got a bit looser. And
yeah.
Things happen. And then you have to trust your own abilities as well, because if you don't, then you're always going to be second guessing and stuff.
Yeah, and you did a really good job in the studio. Even you did different things, like you started adding little, like you had a couple of things, and I'll talk about one of them. But you added movie clips on some of the tracks in the middle, right?
That was like I think the TV was on, and I just put a mic in front of it and started flipping channels, and whatever came, these little snippets, it was like almost like, just let it happen the way it happens.
It was great. It could work great. And then you had I would imagine it's like your daughter, a clip of her crying, maybe.
Not on that album. That album, I think, the laughing baby at the end of the song, that was, I think, a meme or something.
No, there was one of them. There was like a child crying, or maybe it was laughing.
That was the most recent album.
Okay, was that your daughter?
Yeah, it was her.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
She's got the sound of her own voice, and my wife just happened to record it on her phone.
That's awesome, man. But like little stuff like that I like that because you dropped it in appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to a lot of, like, again, coming back to Pink Floyd and stuff, even, you know, that little radio at the end of Wish You Were Here going, and then it starts going, that sort of thing. So that kind of made a big impression on me. I was like, cool, I want to try some of that as well. You know, it sounds cool, and plus it kind of aids the music. It's not taking away from it.
No,
just like, you know, helping your mind go somewhere else. And even the idea of putting like multiple voices, like from different sources. I tried that on a song called Focus 3. So I think I had.
Dude, that's awesome. I listened to that in the gym yesterday. Last night.
There's 4 voices playing. I think one of them is Derek Trucks. There's Frank Zappa. And I think there was a bit of Mahatma Gandhi. I'm not sure. Anyway, I just remember Frank Zappa and Derek Trucks because like I found some really cool interviews that they had done. And they were all talking about, like, Frank Zappa was talking about like how artists are always threatening to dictators. And Derek Trucks was talking about the similarities between the blues and Indian music, and it's, you know, how they interweave and stuff, and the microtones and stuff like that. So like, it's like, cool, man, all this is really cool shit. I'm just going to put it into the song. And
it sounded great, man. And you have some double tracking and maybe even triple tracking, I thought, on that song at one spot. No? Or at least you had at least 2 guitar tracks on that guitar, no?
Yeah. I go nuts at times. That's the Jimmy Page influence.
Yeah, it sounded great. And I was thinking, man, what, you know, I just thought it was really creative that, you know, you when you put them in there, it sounded really, really cool. I really dug that.
Yeah. I'm really into like superimposing 2 very different sounds, playing the same thing and panning them slightly just to get a little bit more weight to the melody.
Yes, for sure.
And even sometimes like different octaves that you play them in. And, you know, it's just a lot of experimentation that I really enjoy doing.
Well, you could tell because it's just the music's fun. And the other thing is it's really cool because on a few songs, like at least once on each record, you have a little bit of an Indian music, conventional Indian music influence. And it's really cool how you do it because it's like on one of the songs, it was like a blues. Another song, you had like drums, you know, like I don't know what's called, a tambala maybe or something.
The Tanpura drone is like, you know, that, what's that Beatles song? Tomorrow Never.
Yeah, great song.
The drum taken. Yeah, so that drone kind of almost like sets a mood. So I've used that a few times. And the Indian rhythm thing is kind of interesting because when I was growing up as a kid, every year they have this festival called the Ganesh Festival, where they, you know, have you seen that elephant god?
Sure.
The head of an elephant and the body of a boy. So they have a thing once a year where it goes on for like 10 days, and on the 10th day they immerse like this giant idol. And right across our house was this park where the thing was held. And as they would escort the idol out of the park, they would have this, you know, procession of drums. And those drums were always like in 6/8. So you would, like, that triplet kind of groove is almost like ingrained into me, like from a really young age. Almost to a point when I was listening to Black Sabbath, Children of the Grave.
Yeah.
It's like, man, that's the same groove. And so, you know, that creeps in every now and then. And then I think once I moved back from New Zealand to Bombay, that was 2011, if I'm not mistaken, I started on working with a lot of music that had Indian folk musicians playing along. There was this TV show called Coke Studio, and I think I played on a couple of those episodes. So during those rehearsals and everything, we would just jam with these guys, and, you know, some really cool stuff came out as a result. So for me, it was almost like reconnecting with my roots as well. You know, after spending like 6 or 7 years in New Zealand, I was like, man, I've forgotten all about this, but it's really cool. And I try to not make it a very conscious thing to have that fusion take place. Whenever it happens, it needs to be seamless, at least in my perception. So as long as that's the case, I really enjoy doing that.
Yeah, it was all great. I mean, everything was great. I mean, the way you put the songs together, the order of the songs. I mean, everything was really sharp, really well done, man. I mean, and I liked hearing the Indian influences because, like, you don't usually hear that. I don't hear that anyway in music I'm listening to, you know. And I thought it was really cool.
It's down to the context, I think, because I mean,
Yes.
I've heard a lot of people try to put it in, and it sometimes can be very cheesy if you don't think it out, or you know, sometimes it just makes you wonder why he did that. But at times it can be really beautiful. Like, have you heard Jeff Beck's song called Nadia?
It was on his later records. Yeah, I have.
And that's a cover of a guy called Nitin Sawhney. And that guy was someone I was really listening to when I was in New Zealand. And he pretty much did a really good job of, you know, putting the Indian with the Western thing together. So he was more like, you know, not as classic influenced as I was in terms of, like, you know, 60s and 70s rock. It was more like R&B and you know, that sort of thing. Though that kind of opened my mind to the idea that you can do this really tastefully.
Yes.
And because like when we were growing up, it wasn't necessarily something that was played in a household. You would listen to it, like, you know, because, you know, you can't escape it living in the city that, like I told you, like these processions and stuff you would listen to. But in my house, my dad would, you know, there's a lot of Beatles and jazz and, you know, a lot of British and American music. So, you know, the Indian thing wasn't something that I had access to. I didn't study it formally. I definitely didn't.
Sure.
So whatever came was a very subconscious assimilation of it, which I think is really cool.
It sounds great, man. Whenever you put it in, it was super tasteful. The few times it's in there, it works perfectly, man. What made you move back to India though from New Zealand? You got sick of too much calm?
I didn't get sick of it though. I mean, the studio that I was working in was going through a closure, so I started flying back and forth. I did the commute a few times.
Oh my God!
Coming back down here, playing some soundtrack stuff and flying back, and I did that I think 4 or 5 trips, and then I mean, just a bit of a backstory. At the time I left to go to New Zealand, what we call the indie scene here is basically, you know, the music that dominates mainstream India is all film music.
Is what?
So
Film music. Interesting.
Yeah, Bollywood film music. It's all accompanied by a visual, right? There's very little music that exists in mainstream perception without the visual.
Really? So there's not a lot of guys doing what you're doing.
No, there are plenty of people doing what I'm doing, but we don't exist in the realm that, say, Bollywood artists do.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting.
So in a Bollywood song, the most important thing is the actor. The second most important thing is the singer. Next down the line is the guy who wrote the song. That's, like, I would think third. And then comes all the musicians that played on it. Unless you're exceptionally good, you're not going to come across in public perception. Okay, that guy played that guitar solo. I'm sure people have heard, like, you know, heaps of stuff that I've played on, but they don't know it's me. But I'm fine with that.
Sure.
But I'm just saying the idea of, like, a band having a hit song that transcends masses, because there's like an urban audience in like the 5 or 6 major cities. There's tons of people living rurally in the smaller towns and stuff like that who only listen to Bollywood. And unless they're like, you know, college kids who have access to, you know, once the internet happened, then, you know, things kind of opened up and stuff like that. So at the time I left, it was kind of like, almost like we had kind of done what we could given the infrastructure of gigs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
2 or 3 huge gigs a year that would exist. And that was it. And so...
there's no like club scene that has bars locally, or?
There is, but that's like a very small percentage of it, if you look at it. I mean, the good thing is, like, there's always plenty of kids. Even like 0.01% of a billion is still a few.
Yeah, you know? yeah. That's true. Sheer size, it works.
Yeah. So your audience will still be a bit, you know, niche. But what happened is when I moved back from New Zealand, I started noticing things were getting better in that sense, because it was like kind of expanding, and then there were festivals and stuff like that was starting to happen. So I was like, maybe now's a good time to move back and see if I can do my thing here. And that's when Jay, who's playing drums with me currently, he came over to New Zealand, and he was like, man, when you move back, we should do something together. And so I think I flew down from New Zealand. I played a gig at a college. That was like the first blackstratblues gig in 2009. And that's what kind of opened my mind to the idea that, okay, maybe this, from being a garage project, could actually be a viable live thing. So that's another thing that, made me want to move back as well.
So you hooked up with him, and then, he's just you guys are such a good fit.
Yeah, I met him when he used to be the drum tech for Zero back in the day.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And then it's just like he just kept getting better and better to a point where like, shit, this guy's too good to like not play with.
Oh, he's phenomenal, man. He's a top drummer, man. He's really badass.
He did go to the States and study at MIT.
You mean Musicians Institute in LA?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. I'm not surprised. He's really an incredibly talented guy. I mean, he's a monster. He could play, and you could tell he could play anything. He could play jazz, that guy. He could play rock. He could play anything. I mean, the fact that what he's doing on your music, I mean, I love, we used it a lot as Floyd. I love, Nick Mason, but, and he was perfect for that band. In fact, one of the takeaways when I watched Pompeii, Gilmore's current drummer, Steve DeStanislaw, great drummer, but man, when I walked out of there, I said to my wife, I said, I miss Nick, I didn't tell her the name, she wouldn't know, keyboard player and the drummer. It's just, they were great, but it wasn't the same thing, but your guy, you could tell he could play everything, and you don't have drummers doing what he's doing on your kind of music typically.
Absolutely, which is what makes it interesting. If I just got a guy who would just play a blues shuffle on it, it would tend to, put it in straight out of more traditional context, right? So, but just having him do his thing on it, and his influences are very different to mine. He doesn't really listen to all the older stuff and all. He got into like, I mean, I don't want to talk for him, but he was like into Incubus and Rage Against the Machine and Red Hot Chili Peppers and.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's totally different. Wow, that's really interesting.
Just pretty much out of me making him go. I mean, he loves John Bonham and stuff, so I mean that's kind of one thing we do connect on. But it's probably just me making him check out the older stuff and saying, man, listen to what this guy's doing and stuff like that.
Very cool.
Because he's like, really? But he's awesome, and he's like a really funny guy. So I love hanging out with him. And he and my daughter, they get along really well. So he's off.
That's great, man. On The Universe has a strange sense of humor. You have a song on there called Two Sides of the Same Coin. And is there slide? Are you playing slide on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's some great slide playing on there, man.
That's like one of the most underrated slide players, I think, is George Harrison. After he left Beatles,
he's phenomenal, yeah, man.
It's like sounds like a human voice, And I mean, I love Derek Trucks, and even Jeff Beck's an amazing slide player.
Oh my God, he's amazing at everything he does. That guy,
pretty much, he's like the governor. That's what they call him.
The governor, man. I like that.
So yeah, man. I mean, my slide playing is kind of not exactly in the traditional, Dewey Allman or even like a Ry Cooder kind of thing. It's more like a George Harrison trying to get a vocal melody out of a guitar.
Sounds great, man.
Yeah,
I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, the thing is, like, when I do it live, it's a little bit harder to control because, like, in the studio you have the what do you call it, the safety net of doing it again.
Yeah.
Sometimes live it's like, whoops, I went a bit too far. But yeah, it's good for adding textures and stuff as well. Like do the Gilmour thing, what he does on Great Gig in the Sky. That's something I learned really well.
That was incredible.
Like just the whole chord moving and stuff like that. Yeah, so that was a good song for. I mean, even live when we play it, it's always like a different trip each time we play it.
Well, but then the song just stops and you think it's over and you got like a surf music for like another, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes.
That's
Tell me,
nothing to do with that song. That's like a hidden track.
oh, is that what it is? I'm like, well, I thought it was like just.
No, it's like your album gets over, right? And you think it's over, and then suddenly some strange song starts playing. That's the idea.
It was okay.
That was supposed to be the 9th song on the album, and then I was like, it's not really connected to anything that we were doing on this album, so I'm just going to make it a hidden track. It was actually called Surf XL because Surf XL is a detergent in India.
Surf XL? That's so funny, man. That's awesome. Surf XL. And then go ahead, sorry.
No, so we went and at the end of it, we went a little bit nuts and we put on a couple of tracks of those claps.
It was great, man. I thought it was like you were playing it. It sounded like you guys were like really into it. Like, yeah, that was great.
That's Jay. That's the drummer.
Oh,
He's shouting it.
That was awesome. You really rocked in that track. I mean, you kind of had like a little explosion there, man. It was really like very cool.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of a left of center blues surf kind of thing. I mean, I love listening to surf music as well, and the Ventures and Dick Dale and all those influences. And I mean, it's not every day that we get to play that kind of music. So this time I was like, cool, I'm going to put one of those songs on the album. But unfortunately, it didn't really fit in, like I said. So it kind of had to be like
It was perfect how you did it, man. Honestly, it was perfect. I wouldn't have known. I thought it was like, because it seemed kind of normal, because like on the stoner rock work in that genre, they do a lot of stuff like that, where something will end and something else will come on. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. You know, and it was kicking. I mean, you could have had that as a standalone track, but I get it why you didn't, because it was just like out of context a little bit, but it was great the way you set it up like that.
And plus it was like a little bit of a humor thing as well, you know, because you're all a bunch of jokers over here.
It was awesome, man. And then the latest record, I won't call it the new album, was The Last Analog Generation. On there, you have a really good song called Reconnaissance Mission. And then on the other album, on The Universe Has a Strange Sense of Humor, you had a song called Renaissance Mission. How are those two related?
Only in groove, because both have like that, the kick drum going boop, boop, the boop, boop, the boop, boop. The thing is, the earlier one, which was Renaissance, came about when the idea to use that groove is like when we play festivals, very often like you'll have like these electronic artists playing on like adjacent stages, and all you can hear is the kick drum, right? Boop, 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 boop. So that kind of sets of things going in your head, and I guess subconsciously it crept in. And in fact, that track's quite popular at gigs because we've been using it to close with. And on this album, I had a little guitar loop because, like, sometimes when I come up with ideas, I just put that down and it's like something like that with a dotted 8 delay, so it goes that kind of thing. So I had that loop recorded, and then when we went in to track this, I was just playing them the different ideas, and I said, well, this as well, but I kind of don't really know what kind of a groove we could use. I did have the idea of that bass line. So, man, we can just use that. But isn't it too similar to that song? So I was like, okay, hang on. So maybe actually we reference that song and make it like,
part two.
Yeah, part two pretty much. So
very cool, man.
That's something we hadn't done before, like referencing a song on the previous album. And, like if you listen to Glass Onion, which is a Beatles song.
Yeah.
And they said, I told you about the Fool on the Hill, and they reference all the previous Beatles songs. Yeah. So that's another thing that's like, oh man, they did it, so we should do as well.
No, it's great, man. It was really good. I enjoyed it. Warren,
that's the second one.
Okay. Sorry? No, go ahead, finish.
The second one is something I just let Jai go nuts on, the drummer.
Yeah.
So that was his baby.
You grew up in Mumbai?
Mm-hmm. Till I was 25.
25. And you had two brothers, right? Or you have two brothers?
Yep.
Cool.
I do have two.
What kind of work did your folks do? You said your mom was a primary school teacher.
Yep. And my dad is a pretty accomplished musician himself, but I don't think he really did it professionally ever since like the kids came along. So he worked a company job and stuff like that, and he was always around to offer advice and stuff. I mean, he showed me pretty much like my first few chords and stuff, and gave me some Beatles albums and sent me on my way.
Very cool. Would he play guitar as well?
He was a bass player in a band, but he plays really good acoustic guitar as well.
You ever play with him?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, all these family parties or occasions would turn into a jam, and that's kind of like my grounding in many ways. And then in New Zealand, we did a couple of gigs because I introduced him to an artist who needed a bass player. And then when I went back, I ended up sitting in on guitars as well. So it was really cool to because he's really solid on bass. You can kind of just lean into his groove and he knows when to push and when to lay back and let you do.
That's really cool, man, that you get to do that with your dad. That's awesome.
The funny thing about my dad is the first chord he showed me was A minor.
Really? That's usually you learn the G chord, the C chord, and the D chord.
Exactly. So he showed me A minor, and then he showed me E, and he said all you have got to do is just move your fingers up and down, and it's perfect, right? And then he taught me a song called "Isle of Paris," which kind of goes like. So that kind of got my fingers moving, and also I think very often your left hand and right hand are out of sync when you start playing.
Sure.
And that's the biggest setback, and you have to get over that. And it came really easy, so I was also excited about. Okay, cool, show me more.
That's really smart, actually, because it's very easy to do those two.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to do the same thing if at all Nia starts picking up the guitar.
How old is she?
She's turning 2 in a couple of weeks.
Turning 2?
So yeah.
Oh, you got a lot of time to figure that out, man. You know what I meant to ask you? We talked about stoner rock. Is weed legal in India?
It isn't officially legal. It is. It's a big part of the culture in some ways, because especially religious ceremonies and stuff like that. There's one festival called Holi, which happens in March, and it's getting rid of the old and welcoming the new kind of thing. And they make this thing called bhang, which is...
What is it called?
BHANG, or maybe 2 A's. And it's basically a cannabis extract, but they blend it into a milk drink, and a lot of people drink it, So it depends where you go. I mean, if the cops want to bust your ass, they will. And if they don't let you go, it's cool. So, it depends where you go, to be honest. So, I mean, I wouldn't recommend smoking it in the middle of the street.
Yeah. But in the privacy of your house, everybody does it. It's
yeah, I mean, I've got plenty of friends that do. Yeah. So, yeah. And the thing is, getting your hands on the raw material, shall we say. Up north, it's more like hash, right? The resin extract.
Yeah.
And down south, it's more like the actual plant, but it looks very different to what you would call bud.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Especially now, I've started seeing hydroponic stuff and all around, which is it's very a recent phenomenon. But it's cool. I mean, there's always a culture, and there's people who do that everywhere you go.
Is it legal for medicinal purposes there? Because here in the States, they usually what they do is they'll make it legal for medicinal purposes, and it's almost like a gradual, and then next year after that, then the state makes it legal for anything. I
think there's there's the THC thing and there's the CBD thing as well.
Yes, we have that here.
As far as I know, I don't know, man. The thing is, what's legal here is not always what's. It's not like people go by the rule book. If you look at the traffic on the road, you think that we have traffic rules.
Yeah. I've seen that. It looks pretty wild, man. I've seen that when people take trips to India. It's like, holy crap.
Totally. It can look like a very lawless place. So it all depends on the context.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, that's really interesting. Your first album, Nights in Shining Karma, you gave that away free. online. And I was curious, why'd you do that? Like, what were you looking to accomplish? And then the album became popular. Once it did become popular, what kind of opportunities came to you as a result?
The idea about putting it free is that I had zero recording costs associated with the album. And a friend of mine very kindly designed the first website. And, I think he hosted it on his server or something like that. So I didn't have any costs. And there was also a time before, like, we had iTunes and, the commercial marketing of music digitally before that was that. I think that happened a couple of years later.
Sure.
So at the time I was like, I'd rather get the music across to as many people that want to listen to it. And if, paying for it online or, just the transaction itself would serve as a deterrent, I'd rather just do away with that. And so I just put it out. And then the funny thing is I used to be really active on this forum called Harmony Central, especially the AMP forum. And a lot of those guys were after me to like put out, because we would do these jams and stuff like that, but someone would upload a backing track and we would all upload our takes on it and stuff. So I used to get really, kind comments from people saying, man, you're a really good player, you should do something of your own. So when it did come out, I was like, oh man, here you go, check it out. So
and that's where you met Ryan.
Ryan, I met him on a forum called U-Tracks Incorporated, which is like a really good resource for like the late 80s digital, lexicons and eventides and that stuff, which is sadly around no more. But man, like that kind of really opened my world to like, checking out gear, because I didn't have the resources to buy everything that, I wanted to try out. So it was a lot of taking people's opinions and some guy saying, hey man, if you like that, then you should check this out as well. Or if you didn't like that, but you wanted to do this instead, check this out.
Check this out. Yeah. What kind of opportunity? So wait a minute. The second album, the new album, didn't have any cost either.
It didn't, and that was free as well on my website.
Wow. That's really cool.
So both those. And still everything, all 4 albums are streaming on SoundCloud. So in case you want to just check it out before you buy it, that's probably what I would recommend.
Well, I mean, I bought it for $7. I mean, it's not like it's a massive, the return on investment is huge. So, I mean, just buy them. What opportunities came after you released Nights in Shining Karma? Because it did really well and became popular.
I mean, till now, I guess people still say they listen to that first album. And some people think like that's probably their favorite blackstratblues album, which I think is really cool, because I think we've come up a long way since then. Still, I mean, it just kind of established me as a solo artist that kind of like we morphed into a band later down the line. But just basically that's me doing instrumental, largely guitar-based music. Yes. And people dug it, which kind of, made me want to do more of it. If basically no one ever got back to me on that album, I would just probably have moved on to something else.
All right. Did you get like session gigs through that ultimately?
At the time it came out, I think people already knew what I did.
Okay.
But I guess so. I mean, I didn't notice like an upsurge in phone calls.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Man, what what are the major differences, if any, between the music business in India and the music business here in the States?
I'd say outright, in India, Bollywood exists as the dominant force. And in the States, like, say, on the States, you have a movie, right? And then they'll source songs from, like, different artists and stuff like that. That would appear on the soundtrack.
Right.
And that soundtrack album is just, a small chunk of your top 40 chart.
It's almost never in the top 40. It's an incidental, with rare exception,
And US the other round.
And that's amazing, man.
Which is why when, the last Analog Generation album went to #1 on the Cross not just the rock charts or whatever, just like #1 all India wide for 4 days. I was kind of like, am I reading this correctly, or is this just like like their computer malfunctioning or something?
What came from that?
Like,
That's a massive accomplishment, man. I'm really happy for you. What came from that?
I mean, it kind of gave us a little bit more credibility as artists, I would think. I mean, that sort of thing is not something that I really, try to make sense of.
It's not measurable, yeah.
Yeah, but I did notice like our audiences at gigs started expanding a little bit, not maybe in terms of numbers, but more demographically. And for some strange reason, like it's gotten younger. That's time's progress, Yeah, like these young kids, and they're like, man, we're underage. Can you get us into the club and that sort of thing? And I was like,
how old do you have to be to get into a club there?
Most of them, I think 21 is the legal drinking age.
Okay,
but they do have festivals and stuff like that. If you're 16 or whatever, you can get it. So yeah,
very cool. What were some of the lower points, or maybe some of the bigger challenges you've had to deal with over your career, and how did you get through them, either music-related, business, or personal?
I think mainly as an artist, every artist goes to a point of questioning their own validity. Am what I'm doing, is it valid? Do people want to listen to me doing the same thing? Am I getting stale? Just questioning yourself, and sometimes getting out of it is pretty hard, because you can tend to overthink it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you worry that you're never going to measure up to who you were like 2 years before, like almost like you're getting worse in a sense. Like stagnating is one thing, but like deteriorating, because especially if, like, I know this, if I don't keep in touch with the guitar, my chops like turn to shit pretty fast. So that's something. It's just you have to get it out of your head, because every time that starts nagging you, your playing suffers and your writing suffers. You kind of need to like just let go of all that and just have a little bit of faith in what you do. And I always perceive myself not like, this music doesn't come from me. It's like I'm just an Andy or a conduit for it to just flow. So you want to be as pure a conduit as you can, without like putting too much of your own ego or expectations into it. So I think as an artist, I would say that that's your biggest challenge. And I mean, in terms of playing your own music, I still rely on working as a seconds guitar player as predominantly is the bills, right? If I were to say, okay, I'm only going to do blackstratblues gigs, it wouldn't really be worthwhile for me in that sense. And I mean, I'm sure we would love to, go abroad and play festivals in Europe and the States. But at this point, I think where all of us are over 30, some of us are pushing 40. We're not young anymore, so like just letting go of family and paid work to go out and do something that may not necessarily be profitable, let alone break even.
Yeah,
that's kind of. I wish we could at this point. If we were like in our early 20s and it's like to hell with everything, even if we lose money, we're just gonna go ahead and do that. That would be really cool. But at this point, it's not something that we could look. I mean, if we had like say a record label support and stuff like that, it would be cool. But these days, it's even harder because record labels are pretty much looking at signing already profitable acts, people who have like heaps of following on social media and stuff like that. They know that they don't really have to put in the effort to let the artist develop. And like say in the 70s, an artist would have like 4 albums that wouldn't necessarily do well, and then suddenly they would bloom and you would get your your Led Zeppelin 4 or whatever.
Sure.
These days, man, if your first album is like not already successful, it's like see you. So it's not really something that I would look at. If the right situation came about, we would love to do it.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's. Yeah, sorry, you were saying?
You're all busy session players.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to cost you money to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. The opportunity cost. Yeah, I totally get that, man. Have you made, everybody pays tuition in what we do. I was wondering if you'd be kind enough to maybe share one or two mistakes that you made along the way and what lessons you might have learned from those mistakes.
I've made plenty that I could learn from. Look, I don't want to really phrase this in the wrong way, but like when you start playing, obviously you are a student and you're working at getting to a point of a certain proficiency. But once you come to that, then you kind of almost have to transition into a point where you have a certain amount of confidence in what you do. Otherwise, your playing and your music will suffer. So I would say that at some point or the other, I go through phase of being a student and then kind of assimilating that into my own playing. And then I don't listen to anything else and I just work on, on what I do. And if I notice that if I keep on listening to, if I'm always in student mode, it kind of almost works backwards for me. And like I said, you always want to be learning, right? And learning new things. But you have to go to a point where you can actually trust your own abilities. And then that comes out in your music. So that's one thing I'd say. And secondly, I would say try to be open to as different forms of music as possible. It's cool to focus on just one genre and work in excelling on that, but always be, open enough to, because I look at, it's very easy for me to criticize music that I don't understand, but somebody else does, and somebody else gets off on it. So who am I to tell them that their experience isn't valid?
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean?
No, I totally get it.
So even if it's like what I would think is mindless, drones or beats or whatever, someone else is getting that and it's causing, a valid emotion or whatever experience in them.
Yeah.
It's like power to them.
You said something a few minutes ago. You said, I never consider myself that the music comes from me. I consider myself a conduit from some higher power, let's call it, or the universe, whatever you want to call it, to the end listener. I think that probably helps relieve stress in a sense when you look at it like that. Yeah. Because otherwise
it's almost like meditation, right? That's what you cease to just like, I don't know. I don't think we really, where music comes from and how just vibration of sound can cause emotional experience. Sure, 100 or 200 years, whatever down the line, they would have scientifically figured out. And I think I've come across a few studies about, why music moves people and stuff like that. But to my little minuscule brain, I think as long as I, I don't have to understand the mechanics of it.
No, man.
As long as I know like the effect that it causes and kind of how to go about, causing that effect. That's pretty much what I do.
Yeah, and I'm glad you have the confidence to keep doing it, man, because you're doing what you're doing is really working for a lot of people. I'd be willing to bet.
Sometimes I feel I don't really have an option because if I don't get it out, then it's just going to like cause me, despair and stress. So I have to.
So the pain of not getting it out is worse than the pain of getting it out. So I hear you. That's a great way to look at it, man. You take the path of, the lesser of the two evils. That's cool, man. As long as it's productivity, it doesn't matter. What's that?
The path of least resistance.
Yeah, that's it, man. Along those lines, if you had to go back and give advice to your younger self, what advice would you have told yourself to make, assuming you're open to listening, that would have made your life easier in any aspect, musically, personally, anything?
One is to just, because right now as a professional guitar player, I wish I had sat down and worked on, just stuff like alternate picking and, just basically having the chops to play what you hear in your head. So right now it's kind of harder for me to sit down and do d than I was a kid. But when I was a kid, I was so excited about playing. I didn't want to like play exercises. I wanted to play music.
Right.
So, it's the kind of like I don't really know if why would I have changed anything now if you're happy with the way things turned out? But I think I spent a lot of time like trying to be something that I was not. But I think that's also something that I had to undergo in order to be who I am now. Yeah. So it's a hard one. I mean, there's so many things you wish you could have changed, but then if you had changed them, maybe it would have been worse off.
Oh, I know. It's funny, as you get older, or me anyway, as I've gotten older, I'm so much more in tune with like the environment I'm in, even for little insignificant, stupid things. Like, man, I was in the gym the other night and I was really tired. I hadn't been sleeping well. Like I said, my wife is out of town, and my phone shut down. Right. And it never happens. I ran out of juice, and I usually keep a record of everything. And I said, you know what? Maybe I'm not supposed to do all these exercises today. So I did what I remember. And it sounds weird, but I'm just assuming that the universe is taking care of me now, and I got to listen,
It's hard to trust,
What's that?
It's a hard thing to trust it, but only when you do, then you feel the effect of it. Without sounding all,
Yeah, no, without sounding all trippy. Yeah, but I do that now. I trust it now. And I think, for me anyway, I spent a good portion of my life not trusting it and thinking that I knew best. And it's like, talk about the path of least resistance. I'm like, man, I'm not that smart. I know that. So let me just like listen. Anything that's giving me a message, what can possibly happen? Right. That's how I look at it now. But yeah, I think it's good to just kind of listen and go with the flow as much as you can. You might have answered this already in a sense, but maybe we can get specific. As far as gear, go-to guitar, what's your like number one?
It's basically always been a Fender Stratocaster. My first electric guitar, is funny enough, was a Hofner.
Oh, German guitars.
Yeah, late 60s thing that we got quite cheap because a friend of my dad's was selling it. And incidentally, now I notice it's like kind of gone up on the vintage market.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously, it's like it had 3 humbuckers and each one had a switch. And it had like a volume control for each pickup.
Oh, wow.
Kind of trippy thing. But those pickups are always microphonic, right? And when you're young, you want to play with a lot of gain and distortion. And every time I spoke, I could hear my voice coming from the
amp. That's funny.
Yeah, and I always liked the way a Strat looked. I think that was a look that drew me in. And I think I borrowed like a cheap Korean Strat from a friend and kind of got used to like how they play, and I realized also it's a great tool for modding, and like you take a Gibson and you kind of like it is what it is, and you can't really apart change pickups and stuff like that. But Strat is like really, you can almost like get your sound out of it, and it kind of makes you work a little bit harder, but it's a little bit more rewarding in that sense. And once I found that your volume and tone controls have to be set on 10, that was like the universe opened up and smiled kindly on me. I think I read it in a Jeff Beck interview. He said, just don't set your volume and tone knobs to 10. I've given away a big secret to you or something like that. And that's pretty much what I do, because I never set, things with the volume 10. I like my neck and middle pickup, that tone knob's around 7, and the bridge one's around 4. And the volume, you notice when you roll off your Strat volume, it gets a little bit darker. And I kind of like that little bit of a loss. If it was on 10, it sounds a little bit scratchy or harsh to me. But the moment you put it on 9, it's like that's it. It just smoothens out, especially with distortion. So just a matter of setting up your amp that way. And once you do, then the whole range of the volume is open to you. Like if you set it on 10, the moment you roll it off, you're like, I've lost a bit of something. Whereas you set it on 7, you get the sound to where you want it. You only have more to go, if you roll it up and stuff like that. So you can do things like where you hit a note, and as it's dying, you can pull the volume up so the note gets bigger after the attack, which is something I hear in horn players and vocalists when they hit a note and the note gets bigger. Whereas if you have your volume in 10,
yeah, that's a good one. You can't expand.
Yeah, so that's, and then amp wise, my first good amp was a Marshall JCM 800. Like, I think it was in 1980 or 81. And before that, I was like into using shitloads of gain. I think I had a Boss heavy metal pedal. Remember those HM2?
Yeah.
They become collect. And my dad had a Fender Bassman, a silver face one from the late 70s, and that was like, the amp I was playing, like bone clean, no distortion of any kind. And I would read about, the only exposure I had to gear when I was growing up was this, they sell used magazines in these little stores, and one of them had like a stack of guitar magazines, Guitar Player, Guitar World, and it's really cheap. And I would start like, reading like what a Marshall amp does. And, they had run, I remember this one particular thing, I'm still looking for that issue. They went through 28 high gain heads or something. And I remember reading about each one and what they do. And I think they went through a Soldano and a Dumble and a Marshall and yada, 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 yada. So a Marshall was kind of always what I thought, like, okay, cool, I need to get a Marshall at some point. And I found one. Someone was, and they're really hard to come across, in India.
I'm sure, yeah.
Luckily, a friend of mine knew someone who was selling one, and so I picked that up. And from playing with shitloads of distortion and, letting the gain do for you, and suddenly you're down to like almost like AC/DC levels of gain, and you got to like really work on your picking and, that sort of thing. So that kind of, opened up a lot of things as well. And then I think I took that amp with me to New Zealand. I used that for quite some time. In fact, I used to go to open mic nights with a Marshall half stack. People just looked at me like I was crazy. It's like, it's the only amp I've got.
That's overkill, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, in fact, the first album was just a humbucker Strat with a humbucker on the bridge, Boss DS1 pedal, and the JCM 800 amp. Yeah, that was it. Even like the clean parts were through that Marshall.
And you playing a Mexican Strat, correct? Or are you playing American Strats now?
Yeah, through my time with Zero, I played a Mexican one, but then I was like, when I started working in studios and stuff, I started making some money. So I bought like an American Lone Star Strat, it was called, which had a humbucker on the bridge. And then I started my modding process. It was gold. I got it painted black. I put a black scratch plate. And then I remember I had two Seymour Duncan stacked single coils and an Allen Holdsworth humbucker. And that guitar served me really well. In fact, that was my main guitar all the way till a couple of years back, where I flew Air Canada and they lost it after 17 years.
Oh, my God.
They're like so nonchalant about it, like saying, yeah, we can't find it, And then he gave me like $800 for it. And
what does a new guitar cost in India? Like how much is a new Strat today, ballpark?
It always depends on the rupee to dollar value, because right now the rupees dropped a lot. So when I bought my American Strat, it was around 50,000 rupees at the time,
which is about $500.
Yeah, no, at the time it would have been around $1,000. Yeah,
which is
it's always a little bit more expensive than your US retail price because of customs and that all the additional costs. But at this point, it depends what you're picking up, because like a Chinese Strat would, around $400-500 worth. And then obviously your custom shop Strats are like way high into the stratosphere. But for me, like these Eric Johnson Strats are like really good, value for money, because I need two of them. For all the blackstratblues stuff, I'm tuned on a half step with 11.
Yeah, I noticed that because I was playing your song. It was like blues, E major blues. I'm like, it's tuned down. Shit.
It's E if you're tuned down. Yeah, but all the other session stuff I do, obviously I'm in standard tuning. So I have two Eric Johnson Strats, and I got a 62 reissue as well.
Okay,
the thing
cool.
I like is just get these jumbo frets put on it, because like the first time I got my main one refretted, the guy just only had jumbos, and he said, "You want to try these?" I read somewhere about some Stevie Ray thing where he put bass frets on his guitar. I said, "Cool, I'll give it a shot." I kind of got very used to having big frets on the guitar, and so that's pretty much one of the few mods. And I really
how does it play different? How does it play different?
I mean, obviously, you've got more distance between like where you have to fret it and the fretboard itself. So when you're bending, and there's like more room to like pull up on it.
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing is, I've got big hands as well. So like I don't really like small necks, and I mean, it depends on the neck width. If like it's like really narrow, it's kind of hard because the string spacing is closer together and stuff like that. And
are you big guy? Are you
Sorry?
big? Are you tall?
6 feet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There's like that's
Not
for India. That's pretty big, though, right? Yeah.
At that side, they all pretty tall guys. Anyway, and pickup wise, I really like Sir stuff, because like John Sir makes some of my favorite amps. I've got a Badger and a Bella.
John Shaw.
And John Sir, SUHR.
Oh, Sir, SUHR. Yeah, I saw you had Sir amps. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's another thing, Sir. Hey, sponsor.
No, I'm cool with buying his stuff. I really like enjoy what he does, so I'm happy to support the company. But just like every time they make something that I want, I'm happy to just pay full retail price.
Oh man, if I get in with them, I'll make sure they connect with you, dude. You're like, one of the top dudes in India. I mean, if I was running that company and I had the opportunity to get my gear in front of 2 billion people, I'd probably be really liberal with a sponsorship. But maybe I'm just stupid or something.
So it's a smaller company, so they're not Fender Sims. But I'm like, he's got guys like Scott Henderson all playing his stuff. So
sure.
I'm sure he's doing pretty well in that sense. But his pickups are really good. They make and I think I've got them in every single Strat that I've got.
That's really cool.
And apart from the Strats, I've got a 335 that, in fact, funny enough, Gibson's been really kind with lending me stuff every time I need something of theirs, like an SG. And I found a nice Japanese Les Paul called an Orville that I picked up recently.
Oh, yeah. A bunch of guys have talked to me about them.
They're amazing, man, especially if you can find one of their reissues. They're really well-made guitars. I mean, I don't mean to sound mean, but they're on par or better than any of the American Gibsons that I've played.
A lot of people have told me that.
All you have to do is just upgrade the pots and maybe the pickup, something that you really like, and boom, man. But this particular 335 is something I've been borrowing from Gibson every time I needed that sound. And she's like, it's just lying at the warehouse. Do you just want to keep it with you? And she was so kind. So I was like, sure, I'd love to. So
That's
I've
nice.
got that. Got a Dan Electro 12 string because I, big Beatles fan, and maybe that sound all across. In fact, the new album, the second one, you can hear it on O2 Rainy Day and O2 Sunny Day and stuff like that. And another trick I found while I was living there was a Nashville strung guitar. You know what it is, right? It's just the thin strings from a 12 string set.
Say that again.
So,
a Nashville.
It's called Nashville tuning. So the guitar string set that I use is called the Dario EJ38H, and it's basically all your wound strings are an octave higher, and your E and your B, which are the unwound ones, are in normal tuning where they're supposed to be. That creates some amazing voicings, especially when your track is already sounding quite full and you just need a little bit of fairy dust on the top. That guitar
Fairy
comes
dust.
out.
I like that.
Yeah, it creates these little, and it sits right on top of the mix and it doesn't get in the way of anything, and yet it really makes the track shimmer and stuff. So I think even on North Star is some. So I've got a Taylor GS Mini that I just keep permanently in that tuning, and I've got a Larrivee OM something that I found in London for quite cheap, so I got that, and that's my main acoustic. Though most of the time when I do track guitar at the studio, they've got a couple of Martins and stuff there, so I end up using that. Just
Right.
one less thing for me to carry to the session.
Yeah, of course.
And of late, I mean, after years of turning amps up to stun and damaging my hearing, so make something called a reactive load, which lets you plug your cranked amp into it and it just loads it down to line level, and then you can do some speaker simulation either via IRs or software and stuff like that. And Universal Audio's got this thing called the aux as well.
Yeah, that's brand new. That just came out. A lot of guys are loving that, man.
Yeah. I find the aux loves my 6L6 amps, and the so likes my L34 amps. So between the two, I wouldn't say one's better than the other. They're both absolutely, professional pieces of gear, but just for a matter of me putting the right amp with the right load. And it's still something that will only develop because they're just getting into understanding like the speakers as big a part of the equation. You take a Vox AC30 and you plug into a Marshall cabinet, it starts sounding like a Marshall. You take a Marshall head and plug into the Vox AC30 speakers, it starts sounding like a Vox. So it's it's a bit of a strange one, because very often you would just think like, okay, I'm going to get the best amp in the world and I could plug it into any speaker cabinet and it'll sound fine. But no, the speaker's the final EQ curve on your signal. So that's as big a difference if, it's quite interesting.
It's funny. I interviewed a guy in Nashville, really not only a great session player, but a brilliant guy. And his name is Jerry McPherson. And he did an experiment where he set up, I think he got somehow a patent on this device that literally does exactly what you said, where they had all these speaker cabinets and all these different heads, and he pointed it around a room. And that's exactly what he found, that its speakers are such a critical component of your sound, more so than the heads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
A lot of listeners are going to probably want to check out the history of your history blues wise. Your musical heritage, and trace it backwards. Are there any Indian or non-American players that influenced you growing up that they can go back and look at?
If you look at non-American, all the British guys.
Well, I'm sorry. Let's just focus on Indian players. Yeah, because everybody knows, all the British guys. Are there any players in India that influenced you?
Yeah, man, because pretty much everyone I listened to while I was growing up somehow became an influence. And I'll mention a few of them. There used to be a band called Rock Machine, which then changed its name to Indiscreet. And when I was growing up, they were like the biggest band at the time. And the guitar player's name is Mahesh Tinaikar, and he's a really good friend. And it was like, like Michael Schenker, that late 70s hard rock kind of thing. So that's something that I really enjoyed listening to. And there was another guy at the same time. His name was Ehsan Nurani, who's now like a really big Bollywood music director. And he's a really good blues guitar player. And he, in fact, introduced me to like a lot of stuff like, Oddly Freed from Cry of Love, Robin Ford, things that I would normally listen to, because he had gone to the States to study and he had a really good record collection. So he was always turning me on to like, so. And incidentally, he's a huge Pink Floyd fan, so we geek out a lot about David Gilmour and stuff like that.
Can you spell those guys' names?
Yeah, Ehsan is Ehsaan Noorani, Noorani. Mahesh is Mahesh, Tinaikar, Tinaikar.
Mahesh, T-I.
And there's another really good blues guitar, Tinaikar, Tinaikar.
Great. And then
Mahesh, unfortunately, like over the last few years, he needed some surgery on his hand and stuff like that. So I don't think he's been, playing as much as he would like to. But he was an awesome guitar player to listen to, and I was, And there's another guy called Rudy Wallang, Wallang, and he's got a band called Soulmate, and they're really good as well. So maybe you should check him out as well.
Rudy, R-U-D-I or R-U-D-Y?
R-U-D-Y, Rudy.
Rudy Wallang.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a ton more that I'm forgetting, And
no, but this is great, man, because I know people, I'm going to want to listen to these, and I know other people are going to want to do the same thing. It, just like you just said, you went back and you listened to, Zeppelin, then you listen to Howlin' Wolf, and, everybody likes to do that. And I think that this is I don't think anybody even knows, like I said, you're like a unicorn. Nobody knows that there's this whole blues and really cool music scene there, and I know you said it may take a second tier to the Bollywood stuff, but man, nobody knows it's even going on here in the States.
Yeah. In fact, there's a really big blues festival every year, and we've played it a few times. It's called the Mahindra Blues Festival, and they've had people like Doyle Bramwell II and in fact, last year John Mayall had come down, and I was like really happy to be able to jam with him. At the end of the festival, they have this all-star jam where all the different artists kind of get together for a couple of songs. I think there's a YouTube clip of that somewhere.
That's cool, man. Who is his guitar player?
Look around. And the previous year, sorry?
Who is Mayall?
He came without a guitar player. It was just
him.
It was just him on keyboards, and I think Greg, I don't know how you pronounce his surname, Rzab, who used to play with the Black Rose and Government. Yeah, he came down, so I had good fun talking with him, because I'm a huge Government Mule fan as well. So
that's funny. I was thinking about, I said, you'd be a perfect guy to open up. I was curious if you knew them, because I said, you'd be a perfect guy to open for Mule, man. Your style of music. It's kind of funny that you mentioned that.
I love the Mule.
Oh, have they played there?
No, they haven't played it. I'd love to hear them. I mean, even when both Warren and Derek were with the Allman Brothers, it was a very cool lineup. In fact, it sounds like heresy, but I think it was as good as the first lineup.
I saw them in concert. I've seen Mule like 4 times, and I saw the Brothers at the Beacon Theater in New York. It was just like one of the greatest experiences I ever had. And I was with my son too, which is really cool. So it was kind of special.
Yeah. In fact, funnily enough, Derek and Doyle were like really kind of to check out playing on the same day, and it's like suddenly I look out in the crowd and I was like, shit, are they actually there, or am I just seeing things? And I met them after the gig, and they were like, man, you guys sounded good and everything. So it was cool to hear it coming from them, because both Doyle and Derek are guys I really look up to, like just keeping that style of music alive, today.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, even like guys like Matt Schofield and like, I have to say though, my main guy is Michael Landau. I just
Michael Landau, yeah.
He's my guy. And so I've got to go and check him out live at the Baked Potato at some point, which I really.
Dude, you got to get to the States. Yeah, I had Matt on the show, Matt Schofield. He's really interesting. Really interesting. Good player, great blues player, Strat player.
Yeah. Another guy called Kirk Fletcher as well, who I love.
Oh yeah. There's a good clip on YouTube of Matt, Kirk Fletcher, and I think Josh Smith all playing together at the Maui something. Yeah, that was good.
That's awesome.
Hey, I want to ask you this question, because I always think people in like India and Far East countries have a smarter answer than Americans. So, and maybe you're just as confused as us, and I'm wrong. What's your definition of happiness, Warren?
I guess it's being in the right place at the right time with the right people around you, and obviously good music and good food definitely helps the experience. And I mean, different people have different things that they want out of life, right? And also they have different ways of reacting to when they don't get them. I'm a little bit more open-minded in terms of, like, I'm not selling out arenas under my own name, but neither am I being accosted by, strange people who I don't want to meet just because, I'm a famous name. I've seen people who have had to, pay the price of being famous, and I don't want to do that. So in that sense, I'm, my bills are paid. I've got a lovely family at home, so... I mean, I don't want to sound content, because there's always things that I look forward to, like, improving on, or, getting a little bit more of life in that sense. And so, especially with like your work and family balance, and sometimes it can go out of whack.
Sure.
Sometimes you got to just it's like really hard for me to turn on a gig because I love doing that as well. So, as long as I can find a happy balance, I guess I'll be happy.
Well, I don't think being hungry and being content are necessarily enemies. Like you could be content where you are, but you're always hungry for more, I think so anyway. Cause like I'm pretty content and I'm always wanting, when I say more, not more stuff, but I want to be better at what I'm doing and work harder and dig deeper and grow as a person,
I mean, I'd love to like just play with musicians who I love playing with as well, not just necessarily in India or New Zealand. I mean, if it works out in that sense, that'll be really cool if I can, spend some more time in the States. I did come across a couple of times. I mean, I was there earlier this year, but it was for a Bollywood tour, and those are really fast-paced, and you don't really have that much downtime. So, I mean, I did go to the Baked Potato and check out a really cool gig.
Oh, cool. What'd you see?
True Tone. I saw, her name was Rachel Eckroth. I think she's Tim LaFave from Tedeschi Trucks, his partner.
Yeah.
So I think he told me that she's playing, and she was playing with Gary Novak, whose drumming I love because he's done a lot of Landau stuff, and Travis Carlton, Larry's son.
Okay.
That was a cool gig. I mean, there was no guitar players there, but I really enjoyed myself. So that was a cool gig to check out.
That's cool. So how long were you here for? You just in and out?
I was in LA for a couple of days, and we spent some time in Atlanta, and then we flew out of Detroit.
Yeah. So you sound pretty busy, man.
I just bought the Soldano amp on that tour, so it was pretty cool.
There you go, man. I was wondering, did you come here and buy some gear, man? You had to.
No, the thing is that Soldano is something I've been looking for the longest time, because I think ever since I told you about that guitar player thing where they showed off, and I was like, man, someday I'm going to get one of those. And then I read a rumor online that they're going to be out of business soon. So I figured when that happens, the prices, they just jump.
Yeah.
So this is my last time to get one at a reasonable price.
That's always a great excuse to tell your wife. They're going out of business.
The funny thing is, since I bought it, the prices have gone up.
Oh, that's great.
So it's like an investment.
There you go. What more do you need? This is a tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
I don't know, man. It's something I'm a little bit uncomfortable, like looking for an answer, let alone answering it. So yeah.
That's all good, man. That's totally cool. I had I've said this a lot. Adam Zimmern plays with Ziggy Marley, and he gave me the best answer on that. He's a lovely guy. We just laughed the whole interview. And he said, how can I answer that question when I have so much self-loathing?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, man. You like, and the thing is, you want to find a balance between that as well, right? You want to like at the door, but you don't want to hate yourself to the point where it debilitates, becoming a better musician.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. Best childhood memory, Warren?
Best childhood. I think listening to the Beatles for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah. I'd love to go back and do that all over again.
That's very cool. Hey, this is a goofy question. Maybe you weren't here long enough. Did you have like a favorite American food that you ate when you were here?
I'd probably say Texas barbecue.
Texas barbecue. That's a pretty common answer. Yeah, good for you. That is good stuff, man.
Especially the slow cook stuff. Yeah, I love that.
Oh, look at you. You're like an expert now. That's awesome. Who's had the biggest influence on your life musically and also personally? It could be two different people or two different groups or multiple people.
Yeah. Musically, I'd have to keep coming back to the Beatles because like they were there from like the early days and I still find them relevant. It's not something that, existed only in a certain phase of my life. It was just like a constant thing. And as a person, it would depend, man. I would say my parents, my wife, and family and the friends. But I mean, is there someone I look up to in that sense? It'll be hard to say. There's so many. Cool.
It's interesting. When I talk to people, any ethnic people, it's always a tough question to answer because not that family isn't important here, but family is so much more integrated with cultures outside of the States. I've noticed that. Again, and anybody listening, I'm not saying you don't love your family and you're not close with them, and I am too, but it's really a different, and growing up in New York City, I saw this, and hanging out in friends' houses, it's a different thing, man, and I can't explain it.
For me, it's kind of hard because like I've always been the one to shy away from, hanging out with family and stuff. I was always more like, just they would leave me with a guitar and I would be happy,
Yeah.
But it's of late, like after you become a parent, you realize like those connections are really important, and obviously your parents are not going to be around forever, and you want to make the most of all the time you've got together on this planet. Yeah,
man. How old? At what age do you think? Because my kids are like, they're almost there. They're not there. Like sometimes they have reflective moments where they're there. I'm starting to see it now, depending upon which kid. My older ones for sure.
That's off late. I mean, like I just became dad a couple of years back.
Okay.
So till then, I would be that person that called my folks once a month. Now it's like twice a week. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotcha. Yeah, that's okay. That's good because I talk to all my older sons, my two boys. They don't live home, and I talk to them pretty much about 2-3 times a week. So maybe we're there. Maybe we've arrived. I don't know. Most important thing your dad taught you?
To play the guitar.
Yeah, man. A chord and then an E chord.
And my mom showed me an F chord. That was fine because my dad had other guitar students as well. I don't know, I'm like, I'm kind of stuck on F. How do you do that? She's saying, well, because you got to hold those two notes together with one finger. It's going to be a bit tough at first, but just stick at it. It's going to happen. And funny thing is, my mom and dad met because my mom wanted to take guitar lessons from my dad.
You gotta be kidding me. That's awesome. Good story, man. How'd you meet your wife?
That's another funny one. I got a call all out of the blue. Hey, can you come tomorrow and learn like 10 Queen songs? And I'm like a huge Queen fan. So sure, I know most of them already. And my wife, at the time, she was doing production for gigs at theaters. So like we noticed each other right away. But then kind of like we're just friends for like 6 months, and then like, we started dating and stuff like that.
Dude, good for you, man. How long you been together?
Oh shit, she's gonna kill me. We got married in late 2012. So yeah, 6 years almost now.
Good for you, man. Congratulations. That's awesome. Any hobbies or interests outside of music, Warren?
Yeah, food, I guess.
What do you
like?
What kind? Like cooking or eating?
I like watching. Yeah, I like watching cooking shows and like like these restaurant reviews and stuff like that. Apart from, like the guitar and gear just takes up a lot of my attention span. I guess like I was always into science fiction, and of late I've been getting back into like physics and quantum physics especially, and that sort of thing. And YouTube's pretty cool that way because it can also lead you down a rabbit hole if you're not careful, because you keep clicking on those videos at the side.
Yeah, but it led me down a rabbit hole to you, to be honest with you. So sometimes there's an upside to that, Just doing a little light physics, little light quantum physics on your spare time. That's pretty impressive. You're the second player I've interviewed that's into physics. I'm trying to think who the other one was, but yeah, they're really into physics.
And the funny thing is, I was really into it when I was a kid, and then once like I got heavily into music, that kind of took a backseat. So I'm trying to like reconnect with that bit right now.
That's cool, man. Hey, I'm going to ask you 3 more questions, and I cannot thank you enough for your time. You've been so generous, sure. And I really appreciate, and it's really glad to meet you, and I hope I'll turn a lot of people onto your music. First question, toughest decision you've ever had to make or most difficult thing you've ever had to do?
I guess it was choosing whether to move back to India or stay in New Zealand, because there were like really good things about both places. Yeah, so that was like a tough one. I think once I met my wife, then that kind of like tossed the scales in that favor. Good,
man. That's good. I'm real happy to hear that. Best advice you've ever been given, and who gave it to you?
Quite a few musicians, but they told me you play best when you don't think and you just let it flow out of you. So, and yeah, I like just keeping that in mind, especially my timing improved. I used to always tend to like rush on the groove a bit. And that was because I was too conscious of what I was doing.
I think that's wonderful advice, man. You play best when you don't think. And last question, man, what's been the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of this change has been deliberate and intentional, or how much is just a part of aging?
I have to say becoming a parent, because it just makes you a little bit more responsible and also a little bit less self-centered as well, because you're responsible for another human being. So, yeah, and it's really one of the most rewarding things, I have to say.
Man, I can't thank you enough. Where do you want people to go to consume your music?
I'd say check it out on SoundCloud first. And if you like it and if you want to buy it, I'd recommend going to Bandcamp, because all 4 albums are there. If you're on iTunes, the 3rd and the 4th album are there. So maybe, that's what you want to do. But check it out on SoundCloud first. SoundCloud.com/blackstratblues.
Great.
That'll give you an idea of what we do.
And do you have like a newsletter list on your website or something?
I'm pretty active on Instagram.
Okay.
Just look for Blackstrat Blues there, and Facebook as well. So any updates are usually on both those 2 platforms. And there's also a Twitter thing as well, but it's not as active as the other 2.
Yeah, I'm the same way. So Instagram and Facebook, it's Blackstrat Blues, and check out Blackstrat Blues on SoundCloud and on Bandcamp. Yep. I bought all the records I bought the 3 of them. You gave me 1 on Bandcamp. Yeah. Man, I can't thank you enough, and I really hope you do come over here. Please let me know anything I could do to, facilitate that or give you some information or whatever. I'm happy to help you. And hey, when's the next record coming out? That's what you should call that one, the next record. Because then you can mess people up. When's the next record come out? Oh, it came out already.
It should be out hopefully sometime early next year, because we've already got the bass and drums and most of the keyboard parts down. It's just a matter of, and this is a particularly busy time of the year, so I'm just trying to find time to get that done as well.
Awesome.
So I'd say hopefully before the first half of 2019.
Great, man. I really hope you'll come on the show and we'll talk about it and listen to it and promote it, man. I'd love to. Man, thanks for everything. Any final words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom. Man, there's plenty of it during this.
Thank you for everything, man. I really appreciate it.
And it's been awesome talking to you. Cheers.
Likewise. Cheers, man. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, share it with a friend on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thanks again to Warren Mendonsa for spending time with us. And again, it's Warren Mendonsa, Mendonsa, and it's Blackstrat Blues. Check him out on Instagram and Facebook and Bandcamp and SoundCloud. Man, you will love his music. Make sure you go to the homepage of everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list so we can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.